When we watch a television show or film, we often fail to recognize those behind the scenes, the craftsman who creates the props and sets which we enjoy so much. Sometimes, however, that skill can bring unexpected attention. Security Check by Arthur C. Clarke. Read by Karl Wallace. It is often said that in our age of assembly lines and mass production, there's no room for the individual craftsman, the artist in wood or metal who made so many treasures of the past. Like most generalizations, this simply isn't true. He's rare now, of course, but he's certainly not extinct. He has often had to change his vocation, but in his modest way he still flourishes. Even on an island in Manhattan that may be found, if you know where to look for him, where rents are low and fire regulations unheard of. His minute, cluttered workshops may be discovered in the basements of apartment houses, or in the upper stories of derelict shops. He may no longer make violins or cuckoo clocks or music boxes, but the skills he uses are the same as they always were, and no two objects he creates are ever identical. He is not contemptuous of mechanization. You will find several electric hand tools under the debris on his bench. He has moved with the times. He will always be around. The universal odd job man who is never aware of it when he makes an immortal work of art. Hans Muller's workshop consists of a large room at the back of a deserted warehouse, no more than a vigorous stone's throw from the Queensboro Bridge. Most of the building had been boarding up, awaiting demolition, and sooner or later Hans would have to move. The only entrance was across a weed-covered yard used as a parking place during the day, much frequented by the local juvenile delinquents at night. They had never given Hans any trouble, for he knew better than to cooperate with the police when they made their periodic inquiries. The police fully appreciated his delicate position and did not press matters, so Hans was on good terms with everybody. Being a peaceful citizen, that suited him very well. The work in which Hans was now engaged would have deeply puzzled his Bavarian ancestors. Indeed, 10 years ago it would have puzzled Hans himself. It all started because a bankrupt client had given him a TV set in payment for services rendered. Hans had accepted the offer reluctantly, not because he was old-fashioned and disapproved of TV, but simply because he couldn't imagine where he would find time to look at the darn thing. Still, he thought, at least I can always sell it for $50. Before I do that, let's see what the programs are like. His hand had gone out to the switch, the screen had filled with moving shapes, and like millions of men before him, Hans was lost. Entered a world he had not known existed, a world of battling spaceships, of exotic planets and strange races. The world, in fact, of Captain Zip, commander of the Space Legion. Only when the tedious recital of the virtues of Crunchy, the Wonder Cereal, give way to an almost equally tedious boxing match between two muscle-bound characters who seemed to have signed a non-aggression pact, did the magic fade. Hans was a simple man. He had always been fond of fairy tales, and this was the modern fairy tale, the trimmings of which the Brothers Grimm had never dreamed of. So Hans did not sell his TV set. It was some weeks before the initial naive, uncritical enjoyment wore off. The first thing that began to annoy Hans was the furniture and general decor in the world of the future. He was, as has been indicated, an artist. He refused to believe that in 100 years tastes would have disintegrated as badly as the Crunchy sponsors seemed to imagine. He also thought very little of the weapons that Captain Zip and his opponents used. It was true that Hans did not pretend to understand the principles upon which the portable proton disintegrator was based, but however it worked, there certainly was no reason why it should be that clumsy. The clothes, the spaceship interiors, they just weren't convincing. How do you know? It was possessed a highly developed sense of the fitness of things, and they could still operate even in this novel field. We have said that Hans was a simple man. He was also a shrewd one, and heard there was money in TV. So he sat down and began to draw. Even as the producers of Captain Zip had not lost patience with the set designer, Hans Muller's ideas would certainly have made them sit up and take notice. There was an authority and realism about them that made them quite outstanding. They are completely free from the element of phoniness that had begun to upset even Captain Zip's most juvenile followers. Hans was hired on the spot. He made his own conditions, however. What he was doing, he did largely for love, notwithstanding the fact it was nothing earning him more money than anything he'd ever done before in his life. He would take no assistance, and he would remain in his little workshop. All they wanted to do was to produce the prototypes, the basic design. The mass production could be done somewhere else. It was a craftsman, not a factory. The arrangement had worked well. Over the last 6 months, Captain Zip had been transformed and was now at the despair of all the rival space operas. This, his viewers thought, was not just a serial about the future. It was the future. There was no argument about that. Even the actors seemed to have been inspired by the new surroundings. Off the set, the 70s behaved like 20th century time travelers stranded in the Victorian age, indignant because they no longer had access to the gadgets that had always been part of their lives. But Hans knew nothing about this. He toiled happily away, refusing to see anyone except the producer, doing all his business over the telephone, and watching the final result to make sure his ideas had not been mutilated. The only sign of his connection with the slightly fantastic world of commercial TV was a crate of crunchy in one corner of the workshop. He had sampled one mouthful of this present from the grateful sponsor, then remembered thankfully that, after all, he was not paid to eat this stuff. He was working late one Sunday evening, putting the final touches to a new design for his space helmet, when he suddenly realized he was no longer alone. Slowly he turned from the workbench and faced the door. It had been locked, but who could have opened it so silently? There were two men standing beside it, motionless, watching him. Hans felt his heart trying to climb into his gullet, summoned up what courage he could to challenge them. At least he thought, thankfully, he had little money here. Then he wondered if, after all, this was a good thing. They might be annoyed. "Who are you?" he asked. "What are you doing here?" One of the men moved toward them, while the other remained watching alertly from the door. They were both wearing very new overcoats with hats low down their hands so that Hans could not see their faces. They were too well dressed, he decided, to be ordinary hold-up men. "There's no need to be alarmed, Mr. Miller," replied the nearer man, reading his thoughts without difficulty. "This isn't a hold-up. It's official. We're from security." "I don't understand." The other reached in a portfolio he's been carrying beneath his coat and pulled out a sheaf of photographs. He rifled through them until he found the one he wanted. "You've given us quite a headache, Mr. Miller. It's taken us 2 weeks to find you. Your employers were so secretive. No doubt they were anxious to hide you from their rivals. However, here we are, and I'd like you to answer some questions." "I'm not a spy," answered Hans indignantly as the meaning of the words penetrated. "You can't do this. I'm a loyal American citizen." The other ignored the outburst. He handed over the photograph. "Do you recognize this?" he said. "Yes, it's the inside of Captain Zip's spaceship. You designed it?" "Yes." Another photograph came out of the file. "What about this?" "That's the Martian city of Poldar, seen from the air. Your own idea?" "Certainly," Hans replied, now too indignant to be cautious. "And this?" "Oh, the proton gun. I was quite proud of that." "Tell me, Mr. Miller, are these all your own ideas?" "Yes. I don't steal from other people." His questioner turned to the companion and spoke for a few minutes in a voice too low for Hans to hear. They seemed to reach agreement on some point, and the conference was over before Hans could make his intended grab at the telephone. "I'm sorry," continued the intruder, "but there's been a serious leak. It may be, accidental, even unconscious, but that does not affect the issue. We'll have to investigate you. Please come with us." There was such power and authority in the stranger's voice that Hans began to climb into his overcoat without a murmur. Somehow he no longer doubted his visitor's credentials, and had never thought of asking for any proof. He was worried, yet not yet seriously alarmed. Of course, it was obvious what had happened. We were hearing about a science fiction writer during the war who described the atom bomb with disconcerting accuracy. With so much secret resources going on, such accidents were bound to occur. He wondered just what it was he had given away. At the doorway, he looked back in his workshop and at the men who were following him. "It's all a ridiculous mistake," he said. "If we did show anything secret on the program, it was just a coincidence. Never did anything to annoy the FBI." It was the second man spoke at last, in very bad English and with a most peculiar accent. "What is the FBI?" he asked. But Hans didn't hear him. He had just seen the spaceship. The end.